Welcome to Beauty is Eternal, in-depth interviews that inspire. I'm your host, Caitlin. Our episode today is called Rising Conductor Star Nisan Ak, discusses artistic entitlement, serendipity, haters, sexism, and more. Nisan Ak is en route to becoming one of the top conductors in the world. Recently chosen as one of Forbes 30 Under 30, she is completing her PhD at the University of South Carolina and was recently appointed as the music director of the Oratorio Society of Richmond-Virginia. Nisan has conducted concerts in Vienna at the Wiener Conzerthaus and Palais Eschenbach, as well as at music festivals in Pärnu, Luzern, Istanbul, and the United States. Born in Istanbul, she started her musical career at age 9 and went on to study at the Istanbul Fine Arts High School. From there, she studied composition at Istanbul Bilgi University and attended the Conservatory of Mimar Sinan Fine Arts University. Next, she completed her master's degree program in Orchestral Conducting at the Aaron Copland School of Music, also known as CUNY. Her contemporary music repertoire includes composers such as Edgar Varese, John Williams, Steve Reich, Aaron Copland, Erkes Ventura, and George Perle. She has studied under famous contemporary conductors including Pavel Järvi, Nima Järvi, Donald Portnoy, George Hurst, Tito Munoz, and Gerard Schwartz. You can find out more about Nisan and follow her on Instagram under the username Chill Harmonic. How did Nisan go from living in Istanbul to New York to South Carolina? What challenges does she face being a female conductor, and at that a female conductor from the Middle East? What role have coincidences played in her life? What memory techniques does she use to remember a score before she conducts an orchestra? How does she deal with internet trolls who spend 8 paragraphs writing mean things about her? Nisan is opening up to us today all the way from South Carolina and answering all of these questions and many more. Welcome to being a guest on this show, Nisan. I'm really excited to have you as a guest.
Thank you, Caitlin. Very nice to meet you.
And nice to see you all the way in South Carolina.
I know. And you're in Boston, so
Yeah.
we're not in Europe at all.
Funnily enough, yeah. How did you first get interested in music? Do you have musicians in your family? How did it happen?
I was very into music since I was, born. Can you say that? Since I
Yeah.
knew myself. But I didn't really start playing an instrument until 8 or 9 or so. I think I was at the 3rd grade, and it was a funny coincidence actually. I was in the choir, elementary school's choir, and my teacher came to me one day, the music teacher, and said, "Hey, you played the guitar, right? Can you bring your guitar like next week or something? Maybe I can put you as a solo for the choir." And I did not play the guitar. But we had a guitar at home. It was like a birthday gift or something like that for me. But I didn't really touch it. Um, my at that time my stepdad gave it to me, but I was like kind of rebellious, so I didn't want to play. But when my teacher came and asked me to play, I was like, okay, now I have to play. So I went back home, told my mom that I want to take guitar lessons, and that's how I started music.
So she confused you with somebody else that had played the
I
guitar?
think so, yeah. Because I I remember thinking, oh, that's not me, but I'm gonna lie to her.
So your first instrument was the guitar? What came
Yeah,
after that?
it was piano right after. Not right after, I think 5 years or so after. Um, I started playing like at the age of 13, so 4 years, 4 or 5, I don't know. When I got into the music high school in Istanbul, and there you have to play the piano. But then I liked the piano better. Not better. I don't want to say better. It Things happened during the high school too. Um, like my teacher that I adored so much decided to go teach at the university level instead. So I didn't really have anyone like yeah, I didn't have a teacher one straight semester. And then I had substitute teacher for 1 year. And then finally at my last year of high school, I had an actual teacher. So it was very confusing. And then during that period, I kind of started practicing more piano. And then I started composing. So I did that instead.
It sounds like you did a lot of learning and practicing on your own then, because you didn't have one mentor.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because I always believe that students need to be their own mentor more than their teachers because teachers will teach you whatever they know, but actually you have to know what's missing uh, in your practice or in your daily routine or in your whatever you're missing and you have to fix. Uh, and then I think I kind of had to learn that in an early age. Oh, okay. I don't have a teacher now. So what do I do? Okay, I know these things. I can practice those things. I can try to make those things better. Or I started composing at the time. So I don't know. I did learn. I did figure out how to learn things by my own at an early-ish age, not super early one. It was good. It was useful.
So you decided to take responsibility for your own education in some way because you realized that you had to do it on your own?
It wasn't like I mean, I was very young, so it wasn't a very conscious decision. I would say it was more like I don't know. I just did it. Does it make sense? I just did it.
It makes sense because I think when we're young, especially, we have very good instincts and we don't always have the life experiences that make us reflect as much. We kind of do things more if they feel right.
Exactly. It felt right. It was instinctual, and I yeah, it felt right at the time. And then it became a life experience. And now I go back and see it. Oh, okay. I was I was alone and what did I do? I just kept doing things, kept producing things. So now it's a life experience for me.
Was it composing that led you towards the path of conducting?
Yeah. So I studied composition in undergrad. Um, and that's also a coincidence. Um, One day, so there was this class called uh, post-tonal harmony, and at the end of the class, you learn about post-tonal harmony, and then at the end of the class, you compose a piece for the ensemble of the musicians that are taking the class. It's like a it's like a composition workshop, but you learn the harmony. Hello, Kitty.
Okay.
Of the piece that you're going to compose at the class. Well, anyways, the the composers of that class were rehearsing their pieces, and then next room, I was practicing piano for my other class. And then they wrote pieces that they weren't able to follow, so they needed a conductor, and they knocked my door and asked if I can beat 4 for them. That's and I couldn't beat 5. Like, could only beat 4 anyways. So I said yes, okay. So we rehearsed, and they realized that they needed a conductor during the concert too. I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I did. And then apparently at the concert, there were professors from Conservatory that has conducting degree. And they told my professor that I was talented and I should come and study in their conservatory, like be a guest student. And I said, oh, yeah, that sounds great. Can I do that? And I did. I went to the conservatory for 2 years. And then during those years, I learned a lot. It was a great learning experience. And then I got accepted to New York to master's degree.
So the 3-year conservatory, that was the Mimar Sinan Fine Arts?
Yeah.
And so you did your undergraduate and then you went to New York to study at CUNY.
Yes. So Mimar Sinan, I didn't graduate from Mimar Sinan. I was there as a guest student. That's what they call it. It's pretty self-explanatory. You're a guest student. You don't have a diploma or you don't have credits, but you learn. You're allowed to get in. And, I was conducting a lot and stuff. So, yeah, I'm very appreciative. Actually, I went to Mimar Sinan a month ago. I gave a seminar there. And apparently, so I didn't know who that person was. I just knew a person told my professor that I am talented and I should go study at Mimar Sinan. So I went to their composition class to give a seminar about composition and conducting. And I learned who that was. He was like, oh, that was me.
So the person who played a hand in your fate and in your, changing your future when you were younger, you finally met them.
Yeah, I mean, I knew him. I just never knew that was him. His name is Özkan Manaf. I never knew who that was. And he was like, oh, I think that was me. That was great. That was a great reveal for me.
It's also a good example that we never know in our lives what we do to really help people or change their lives in a positive way when we, do something good for them. We never know what it's going to lead to.
And it's when you're a conducting student, they always tell you that, okay, every time you're on the podium, you have to do your best because you never know who's watching. And that moment of my life was the concert that I knew nothing about. I knew nothing. I just knew how to be 4. and that moment, that was it. I mean, I'm sure there were other moments, but yeah.
What was the adjustment like when you went to New York? So you went from living in Turkey to living in New York. Now you live in South Carolina.
I do.
What's it been like to live in these 3 different places? Because they're all very different.
They are very different. Well, first from Istanbul to New York wasn't a very big adjustment in terms of living in a big city, because I think Istanbul is even more chaotic than New York. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think so. But I mean, moving to another continent, moving to a different culture, different country, it's very, very hard. And I can only realize this looking back, I didn't really understand at my first year how much of an anxiety that it gave me. Um, Trying to learn the language, trying to learn the culture, also starting a whole different new school. Not only just a different school, but also a different practice, because I studied half conducting, but I never really, it was the first time I actually was in a conducting degree, and I was trying to learn everything in a different language. So the first year was incredibly hard. And of course, I didn't have money, which led me to do the internet campaign, crowdfunding to fund my school. Like there was so many, like I feel like just every other month there was a crisis that I had to. The first month, like just getting there was hard, and then oh my god, I think the second month I was finally able to find my apartment, and then by the fourth month I was leaving that apartment because I had terrible roommates.
Oh.
And then fifth month I went to a new apartment in the city, and sixth month I realized that we had bed bugs.
Oh no.
Like also it was around that time when I was starting doing the campaign. Like it was just like it was crazy. In the first 6 months, so many things happened. And then finally, second year, I was like, my brain was not as busy. And then I was learning a little bit more. But then master's is only 2 years. So boom, you're out. You learned as much as you can. But I was lucky. I was lucky enough to I don't know, learn and do a lot during that 2 years. I think it was because of New York too, because there are a lot of opportunities like about learning in New York. And then because of those opportunities, I assisted Donald Portnoy in New York, who invited me to South Carolina. And
So this is, oh, go on.
That's it.
That was going to be my next question. How did you end up doing your doctorate in South Carolina?
So yeah, I assisted Donald Portnoy, who was the director of orchestral studies in University of South Carolina. Oh my God, that has a story too. I was in North Carolina in Eastern Music Festival. I was conducting there, and like I was a conducting fellow, like student. And then I got a call from Maestro Portnoy because we talked about it before. He told me if I wanted to come to South Carolina for a doctorate degree, and I was like, oh, that sounds good, sure. And then I got a call, and he said, oh, wanna come? And I said yes. And then he offered me some stipend and credit hours and stuff. But then at that time I was making more money in New York, and I now had experience. I knew that when you move, your first year is very important because you don't have network, you don't have people to pass you work, gigs and stuff like that. So your first year is basically you need a chunk of money or a salary or something, monthly income, in order to just move. Otherwise you're gonna be broke and gonna do fundraising. So I told him that I that money that he offered wasn't really enough, unfortunately, and I couldn't live there by my own, and I didn't know anyone in South Carolina, so I really couldn't do that, I said. okay, he said, and he hung up. And then 24 hours later, he called me again and said, oh, okay, how about double of what I said yesterday? I was like, okay, I'm coming. And that was, I think, like towards the end of July. So by 1st of August or something like that, I went back to New York, and I think I booked my flight ticket to 15th of August or something like that. So I had only 2 weeks to find a subletter for my apartment, for my room, sell all my stuff, find a house in South Carolina, book my flight and everything. I was crying every day.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. Only 15 days to just move again to somewhere else.
That sounds like a very action-packed 2 weeks you had there.
It was crazy. So I was in New York from 2014 to 16, and 16 to now, South Carolina. I'm about to finish my doctorate.
Yeah.
Okay.
The cat is going a bit crazy. Okay, so you've been there since 2016 and you're finishing your doctorate there now. Yeah. And how have you found living in the South?
That was more different, actually. I've never lived, well, I have lived in Datça for 1.5 years when I was 13, 12, but I was with my mom and stuff. I never lived in a small city. I was actually calling it a small town when I first moved in, and they were getting offended by it. Now I'm not calling it. It's a small city. Because for me, now that I lived here for about 4 years, it is now a small city for me. I think it's a decent sized city. I got used to it here, and I love it now. But my first year wasn't as. It was a different experience. I never lived in a place where there wasn't a reliable public transportation, for example. Or I don't know. It's very different. It is very different. But once you get used to it, though, you have so much time to practice and study, and be calmer. It's crazy. Now I go to Istanbul or New York every once in a while, and then it's just like even walking in the street is very anxious. Everyone's like walking faster. The pace is in general faster. I don't know. I don't like it anymore. I like this better. I have more time for myself.
I can understand. I think in the big cities, the speed of life is moving very quickly. Everybody wants to achieve something. They're afraid they'll miss out. So there's a lot of quick movement and a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you have discovered this, what they call the Southern charm.
Yes. Yes. I'm a Southern gal now.
So you, in the meantime, including all of your studies where you were in Turkey and then in New York and now South Carolina, you've still made time to conduct orchestras around the world. So
yeah, well, you have to, kind of.
So you conducted at the Wiener Conzerthaus and the Palais Eschenbach, two of the places I saw, and I was like, oh, I know those places.
Yeah.
How did this come about?
I think one thing about conducting is that you just have to make yourself available and create opportunities, because when you are learning, when you're in school, no one really, unless you're like discovered and lucky kind of, no one really is going to give you opportunities. Like, oh, okay, did you just graduate? Here are some music director positions. No, not really. Not at all. In fact, you're going to apply and get rejected from everywhere at all times. Um, so that was all of these things that I did. I either applied or kind of um, found a way somehow, especially when I was in school. It's just, you just make it happen, kind of. And then when you do make it happen, you gotta make sure that it's a good job so that you can be re-invited, or you can use the footage or the recommendations and stuff like that for future things. So you kind of, it's like blocks, you build it up.
That makes sense. So it's not like people are handing things to you on a silver platter, like, oh, come conduct here, come conduct here. It's sort of like you need to make connections and talk to people and use the opportunities that you do get and grow from them.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear about the nuances of conducting, like, for example, at the Wiener Concerthaus. Can you talk about what that experience was like how what it was like to meet the orchestra, how you prepare for that, how early you're at the concert house? Can you just, yeah, go over what that experience is like?
Well, the Vienna Concerthaus concert was also a summer music festival. So I knew the orchestra. It was a student orchestra, uh, and I worked with them like during that whole month with different projects. But I knew everyone, so it wasn't as intimidating as conducting the Vienna Symphonica or something like that. Uh, um, but it was still like a glamorous experience because you're rehearsing in one hall and then I don't know, crazy famous people rehearsing in another hall at the same time, and then you go on a break together at the same cafeteria area, and then you just talk. Oh, what were you doing? Oh, I was just conducting Beethoven downstairs. What were you doing? Oh, okay, I was just conducting Strauss upstairs. Oh, okay, great. And then sometimes they go downstairs and then listen to you, and then you go upstairs and listen to, and it's like, that thing that when people say, oh, you have to make sure that you're doing your best all the time, it's really true because they do come downstairs and watch you conducting. I met incredible people that month. Incredible people that month. It was so inspiring, and I still see them.
Well, it sounds awesome.
It was really awesome. It was very inspiring.
What is your experience like conducting the older classic, for example, Beethoven and Brahms, where a lot of people are very familiar with the music, versus more contemporary classics where the audience maybe wouldn't know the music as well? Is it different for you? Oh.
I feel lucky because I studied composition in my undergrad. So I had the chance to analyze a lot of different music, both classical, romantic, baroque, but as well as modern, post-romantic, post-tonal, uh, contemporary styles of music. So I think I have the ability to understand newly written music well. And I feel like, especially if the music is written in the years that I was alive at, starting 1991, I think I understand them better in a weird way, because not weird actually, because I feel like the sounds in the music is something I can relate to more, because the composers, or let's say compositions that were composed starting 1991 to today have the sounds of the world that I was born at. I know these sounds. I can relate to those sounds. I can understand those sounds, and I can guess what that sound is. For example, I have to actually think more creative when I don't know, listen to Wagner, for example, or Mahler, let's say, because I have to think about what kind of sounds we had around that time. For example, Mahler has a lot of train sounds, train horn sounds in his music, because around that time it was like right after industrial era and stuff, so there was a lot of train sounds, and sometimes he has this like major third and minor third movement gesture, and it's with horns. That's I hear that now in South Carolina, because my house is very close to a train like train crossing.
Uh-huh.
So trains are like always honking their horns, and sometimes it's a constant honk, not like just bump bump bump, but it's like a ba sound. And when they're close, it's a major third. It's a to be very very theoretical. It's a first inversion major triad chord, and then when they get further away, the major third kind of, I hear it as major third becomes a minor third. Same thing happens in Mahler symphonies. It's crazy. It sounds just like trains, and I could only understand that after living in a more, smaller city close to a train station. I couldn't hear that before, and now I understand Mahler better.
It sounds like you're saying that composers, for instance, are composing things in their time, and part of the era that they live in, the society, sort of gets embedded in their music.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course.
Does it happen in your compositions as well, you think?
Of course. I feel like it's impossible to have that unless you're trying really hard about being absolute. But even if you're trying that, I feel like you're listening to your contemporaries. It's very hard to be not influenced by the sounds that you have around you.
Especially something like art, where when people produce it, they're also producing it based on the sounds around them, but also the way that society functions, what else is popular, sort of like with a book. Oh. Like a book can stand on its own. You can read a great book. It doesn't matter if you know the history of when it was written, but once you understand that, you just are able to see the nuances so much more clearly, because then you see the connections and what influenced certain things.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you can't, that's the beauty of art. That's what I love about art. You have the choice to not get deeper, but once you do get deeper, you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that too. And you can learn about the history, you can learn about the theory. There's so many levels that you can discover. You can learn about the artists themselves. There's so many things that you can discover in one piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also really interesting, the artist and the artwork, and to see how the depth of it that becomes clearer when you research more when and how it was created.
Exactly. It's very, very inspirational. I inspiration is like a fuel to me. I have to have inspiration because sometimes, no matter what, like things get boring, monotonous, or like very bureaucratic time to time. And then as artists, we get bored with bureaucracy, especially. I mean, I get bored. I don't know about you, but I get really, really just, I feel like I want to quit sometimes because of certain bureaucracies. It's stupid. And then when I feel like that, I either go to like a museum or try to listen to music or read a book or something that can just give me some inspiration. I need that. That's just and then I feel better. I feel way better.
So those are your sources of inspiration?
Yeah. Sometimes I'm unable to understand that I'm feeling trapped in like some sort of like a vortex. But once I do realize, I tend to find some sort of inspiration source for myself, and then I immediately start feeling better. It's crazy.
And one of the things, apart from being a part-time historian, which it sounds like you are when you study music, one of the things you also have to be really good at is memory. Because if you're up there conducting, you're not flipping pages in front of you. You have to keep an entire score in your mind. How do you do that?
Yes and no. You don't really have to memorize everything. But this is what I think. The score becomes like a graphic score during the rehearsals and concert. So you don't really, you look at the details of every part of the music ahead of time. So the detail-oriented analysis happens way before the first rehearsal. And then the score becomes like a graphic score that just reminds you things. Because some music is just so long and there's no way to remember. And it repeats, and then some sections are very similar to each other, so you don't really know where you are at. But there are some music, for example, it's just, for example, it's very fast and the score is not conductor friendly. So you have to change a lot of pages all the time. Like one page has, I don't know, because it has a lot of orchestration. I don't know, one page, and there are a lot of notes. I don't know. One page has 3 measures and it's fast. So 6 measures takes like, I don't know, 6 beats maybe if you're conducting it in one. So you just constantly have to turn pages and it's impossible. So you have to memorize. There's sometimes like you just have to do it. But if it's not like that, you don't really have to memorize. But every time you look down, you have to know that there is a little bit of disconnection between you and the orchestra. So you have to be prepared for, there are certain passages that I always memorize. I have to know exactly what is going on. And there are certain moments that I cannot turn page because it's so silent, for example, or there's no music or something like that, or between movements or something like that, that I have to contain the moment, you know. So yeah, it's somewhere in between memorization and not really.
And the art of knowing what you need to remember, what you'll be able to review, and what you have time for. It's sort of like you have a pattern and you need to work out, these are the places where I need to do this, these are the places where I need to do that. And then you have an overall view.
Yeah. Well, that's for concert, of course. For rehearsal is way different. I mean, you have to rehearse every single thing. and then I mark my parts during, like, I have these little sticky notes, and I just kind of put them on my score during the rehearsal, so I know what went wrong, and I can go back. So I don't have to like put it in my. I don't have to remember everything. I can just put it on my. It's very practical.
Is it very stressful to conduct an orchestra?
Depends on the orchestra. It can get stressful, because you never know. Not really. You never know if you're guest conducting. Let's put it this way. If you're guest conducting, you never know what to expect. I mean, you can have an overall expectations, but it's kind of, who knows? Just go blindly, and then you just do your best, and you have to. If it's not my orchestra, I can't really do much about the quality of the sound. I can only do so much, So you just make it happen somehow. But sometimes you go to great orchestras too, and then it's so good. It's just it's like driving an amazing car after driving not an amazing car.
So it sounds like if you're going to conduct somewhere and the orchestra is top notch, then they're going to be very professional and they're going to respond really well to you, and you're going to most likely have a very positive experience.
Yeah, I mean, and it saves time too, because then I don't have to stop and talk about my gestures, because they can read my gestures, and then I don't have and then they mark their parts immediately, so I don't have to say those things, and it's so great and it's so smooth. I love those orchestras.
Even though conductors have traditionally been male, it doesn't sound like that's an issue for you when you step up with a professional orchestra.
Well, it's not an issue. If I was able to conduct that orchestra, if I was invited to a certain orchestra, that means that orchestra does not have an issue with me. Does it make sense? It's kind of like, if they had an issue with me, I wouldn't have the chance to conduct them anyways. So I never know which orchestras have an issue, because I'm not invited to them anyways. If I am invited to conduct that orchestra, that means they do not have an issue with me. So, and which doesn't mean that they are sexist. Sometimes they might have an issue with me particularly, or they might have an issue with females. That's a whole different thing. But I mean, crazy words are out there about female conductors, and it was like 2 years ago. Very famous conductors gave speeches about how female conductors are just, what did they say? Just to get more views and stuff, just to get more audience. And okay, not really, but okay. Not okay, actually, not okay. Let's put it this way. And so we're fighting with that. We're fighting with that all the time. And I love that, especially since the Me Too movement all over the world, they are not silent anymore, and our voice is being heard even more.
I know in some fields women have to be better than men if they want to reach the same position. They've got to be, really tough. Do you think that it's like that in some cases in conducting still?
I do feel that way. I also feel, I mean, I'm also Middle Eastern, so I feel that double because I feel like there's always this like urge in me to, like, in order to be in the same level of a European or American, I need to prove myself to them that I deserve or so. So yeah, of course, whenever I'm on the podium and if there are like other people, men, are watching, I feel that I have to be perfect or as perfect as I can be. And I feel the same thing about sometimes not being white, because that's also a thing, unfortunately. Sometimes, well, I don't know. Well, that's the problem. These things are so behind the doors now that, like, it's so subtle. It's very, very subtle. So I can never know what's happening behind the curtains. I only know if they are not sexist and racist, because then they are communicating with me. Then they are inviting me. Then things are positive. But if they are not, I don't know if it's because of sexism, racism, or it's just because we didn't match well. That could be a very well reason too. I don't know. So
Well, it's not like they're going to come right out and tell you that in the age that we live in. Maybe 50 years ago, sure.
yeah,
But
exactly.
nowadays, people won't
Especially
tell
after
you.
the Me Too.
Turkey is both Europe and Asia, from what I understand. Do you feel Middle Eastern? Do you feel European, if I can ask you?
Well, I don't think what I feel matters much. We are. I mean, we are Middle Eastern, aren't we?
Do you
So
think you're perceived as Middle Eastern then?
I don't know. I never thought that. I I think I'm just from Turkey. Turkey's complicated.
Okay, I hope
I'm
it's okay to
from
ask you that.
Istanbul, so what I can say is I'm from a bigger city. You know, the big city culture is more diverse. So I never felt like I belong to a certain culture. You know, it's more of a big city culture. It's the same in New York or Istanbul. That's where the two cities I lived, big cities I lived. But I mean, I felt the same thing in other different cities where I went. It's the same big city culture.
I see what you mean. It's also very mixed cultures in
Yeah,
big cities also.
yeah.
I was just curious because you referred to yourself as Middle Eastern. I just wanted to understand how you would interpret that. But it's hard to interpret it in any one way, and you don't know how different people could say, oh, she's European or she's Middle Eastern, or yeah, you don't know.
Well, that's a kind of a unfortunately interesting thing too, because depending on your skin color, sometimes people can name you Middle Eastern or European, and sometimes, yeah, because I mean, they can't really understand my accent because here in the United States, there's no Turkish stereotype just yet, not like Europe. So they can't pinpoint where I'm from. But they always say something like, "Oh, Eastern European," because they don't really. I don't know if they can't guess Middle East. I don't even know.
Maybe
But
there's not a fully developed Turkish stereotype in the US that they
yeah,
can refer to.
there isn't. But they never say any country from Middle East, you know. They never say that. So I think that's kind of a thing too. I don't know. These are all observations that can be well thought, deeper thought, but I tend to just let it go mostly.
I think you have to, right? Because in the end, we can't make everybody happy, and they're always, we just have to do our best.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, unfortunately, because I have my own agenda and I have to follow it, and I'm not very available to think those things. And if I do, I wouldn't be able to practice enough or study enough. So I have to do those things.
I was saying, I think that you're going to be very famous in the next few years, that you're going to reach a level of fame that maybe you don't even anticipate based on what I can see from you and how quickly you're growing. And you were saying you are happy about it now, even though you didn't used to be.
Yeah, it was a scary thing because when you're in music school, constantly you're learning about these amazing musicians that existed and you're analyzing them. They become your hero, and you think that comparing to them, you're nothing and you don't have the right to come out and make your voice heard because you're nothing comparing to them. And that's where the entitlement, artist's entitlement comes, because at some point you just have to accept the idea of you are who you are and come out and make your voice heard, because that's when you are able to reach to a crowd. And then because of you, because I am able to come out, they will discover the music, they will discover you, but mostly they will discover the music of the amazing people, or me, or some other people, but they will discover it. And that's what's happening now because of all those YouTube things, videos that I do. People are discovering classical music and they're very happy about it. So I'm like crazy happy about it.
How do you learn to experience that entitlement, the artistic entitlement?
So normally, entitlement is considered as a negative word, but artist's entitlement is actually a positive word, because, you know, you have to have a certain level of entitlement in order to say, okay, this is my art and I'm going to make this art visible, audible by others. And that's that, especially now in 2020, kind of takes a little bit of confidence, unfortunately, because they will comment on it and you will see it. It's not just, spoken comments. It's now everything is written. So sometimes it hurts. But in order to have anything, to put anything out there, you have to have a certain level of entitlement, artistic entitlement. Otherwise, you won't be able to put anything out. You won't be able to produce. You won't be able to compose in any medium. So having the entitlement is hard, or was hard a little for me. But now that things kind of got out of control of me, things are happening, I kind of gave up at some point, and just like I don't really regulate things, and I can't really regulate it anymore. So it's just out there, and then I realized that, okay, you know what? I shouldn't have, like, I shouldn't have. It's a weird thing. It's not like not having standards is the wrong. That's what I have. Like, oh, I have to lower my standards in order to be accessible or popular or something like that. And it's not really like that. You don't have to lower anything. You are who you are. You can't lower yourself anyways. It's kind of impossible. But you just change your language, more be more accessible, and then the only hard part still for me, just sometimes when you're accessible to anyone, you know. And then I don't want to be accessible to anyone just yet. I'm not there yet, but I'm learning.
By accessible, do you mean anybody can contact you or people recognize you on the street? Or
No, anybody can comment on anything.
oh,
That's what I mean. Because sometimes, I mean, mostly I'm lucky. I mean, I my YouTube followers in Instagram and anywhere mostly, like 95% positive comments, and they are very nice and very respectful and everything. But sometimes there's just one idiot hater that just like decides to write 8 paragraphs about how terrible and ignorant I am. Like, why? I have 4 degrees in music.
I think that there are some people, very few people in the world, but there are some that get a sense of power from criticizing or being mean, and that they'll find people in all walks of life. And sort of when you're in the public eye, they will find you because they'll find everyone. They probably go from your Instagram to someone else's, like, oh, what can I make up to criticize here? It's a good
I
day
know.
for me too in one day.
I started understanding that in Twitter because you can actually see if when that person joined Twitter and then who they are commenting to. So you can see a pattern if someone's a troll or not on Twitter. But in YouTube, it's hard because you can't understand, like, you can see how many followers they have. But most of the time, YouTube people, unless they're creating contents, they don't really have followers anyway. But you can't see who they're commenting to, so you can't see if they're haters or not, or trolling or not. So
What?
learning.
Well, I've also gotten some criticism for my podcast recently. Most of my
Oh,
feedback is positive, but I had some people like going on someone about how they don't like my voice. And I was like, well, it kind of was freeing in the sense that I was like, well, if they don't like my voice, okay, I can't really change my voice, so it means it's not my problem,
it's
but
so
it hurts a
stupid.
little bit. I'm like,
It
you took
does
all the
hurt.
time to write that, like, okay.
I know, and did you watch the South Park episode about Yelp reviews?
I'm
There's an amazing South Park episode about like Yelp reviews and stuff, and then there's this super serious troll, and then he's like wearing his what do you call it? Anyways, long story short, they're just not. I mean, it's like when you say that, I can immediately think that, oh, that comment to your channel is stupid. But when it's on my channel, I don't think that way because it's to me. Like, no, I have to stop everything and think about it for 24 hours.
Oh,
It's not that much, of course, but it affects me. It still affects me. So I don't. But like recently, I watched an interview of the Hermione Granger in Harry Potter.
Hermione.
Yeah, what's her name?
Oh, Emma Watson.
Watson. Was it?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
Emma
so.
Watson. I watched an interview of her, and she was saying basically telling how to deal with hate comments that come to her. And I'm like, who would say anything bad about Emma Watson? You know, like, it's just, there's, and even if Emma Watson is getting hate comments, then it's okay. I'll take it. They can hate me.
I'm really convinced that it's a small part of the population and they just go around and they do that to everybody and it's like their way of fun in life or something.
Just also, you have to have a lot of time if you decide to write an 8-paragraph hate about a total stranger. Like, come on.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any methods that you're using to kind of brush off these comments? Because not unfortunately, but the more famous you become, the more attention you attract. And if a small amount of that is negative, very small, if you're attracting, 5 million people, it's going to be more than, 50,000 people. And do you have any methods for kind of letting go of that stuff?
No, not a systematic method at least. But I mean, I kind of talk to my friends about it if it really affected me. But recently, I got to meet this very super famous person, and we talked like only a little bit, and even in that little bit of a conversation, there was this one phrase about like hate comments or something like that. And this person is very famous. And this person's been very famous since forever. And from that comment, I realized that, okay, you know what? Even he is thinking that, and he's been famous forever. And so this is a thing. This is like everybody reads comments and everybody gets nervous or upset or something somehow with the comments. So I have to find a way that it won't affect my life. So I'm trying at least to not affect me. Sometimes it makes me upset, but it won't affect how my life works or like my content or whatever I want to put up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's good because like what I do, especially what I do on YouTube, is a very, like, I talk about music, classical music, and how to listen to it. It's kind of like a music appreciation 101 class. But it's in Turkish. It's about classical music. And I have like 10 videos or something. So it's not really popular just yet. But even with that thing, if I started getting a lot of views.
Well, you've got 24,000 followers, you said, or subscribers on YouTube. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
pretty,
crazy.
yeah.
And I only
Only
started
10
5 months
videos.
ago.
Yeah, that is, wow.
It's crazy. And that opened up so many opportunities of interviews, TV shows, so many things because of that YouTube thing. So, I mean, why not?
It sounds, so that's like your sense of entitlement, like saying, hey, you know what? I actually know a lot about music. I can probably teach people some stuff.
Guess what? It didn't start as an entitlement. I wish it did, but it didn't. It started as this also has, oh my god, everything I do has a coincidence story. It's full of coincidences. Okay, this is the last thing I'm gonna say. I'm gonna go. So when I was in second year of doctorate degree, I took a class called Bernstein. We were analyzing his music as well as we were analyzing his like spokesperson personality. Um, and one of my homeworks was to create a video of me talking to the camera and explaining something. So I made a video about Tchaikovsky to second movement. And it's in English. I'm in front of a piano and it's still there. I'm not deleting it. It's so stupid. It's a homework. And it's like a 5-minute video. And I decided to just, I don't know, put it up on YouTube. And you can see this. It was like 2017 or something like that. Last year, well, 2019 summer, somebody from Turkey, a producer from Turkey, approached me and said, "Oh, hey, I watched your video, and that is very promising. Do you wanna?" And it's not promising. I promise you, it's not. I don't know how he thought that. Do you want to do that kind of content, but in Turkish, and we can maybe air it on TV? And I was like, oh, okay, let me try. And I tried. And my Chopin F minor nocturne video on YouTube is the video that I tried. It's like a 5-6 minutes video. And I just talk about it just a little bit in Turkish. And I put it on. I wasn't even going to. Oh my God, yes, I remember that. So I just sent that to the producer. And then I kind of liked it. So I sent it to my other friends. And they said, oh, why don't you post this? And I did to IGTV, Instagram. Because I was not on YouTube. I was not on YouTube. And then people started tweeting it.
Wow.
And it got a lot of retweets. And then people started saying, please post it on YouTube. We can't watch it on Instagram. It's very hard to see it on Instagram. And then I didn't post it. I made another video about Beethoven's Fifth Symphony's beginning. And then that got retweeted a lot. And then I think finally I posted those two on YouTube and posted another third video or something on YouTube. And then it got crazy. It just got crazy. And none of these things were planned. It was just like, oh, this person wanted a video of me. Okay, I'll do it. Oh, well, first it was a homework. Okay, I'll do it. And then this person wanted a video of me. Okay, I'll do it. And then people started tweeting and asking me to do more. And then I started doing it. So actually my entitlement didn't really come because I was feeling artistic entitlement. No, it was more like people actually wanted content from me. And then I started producing. I wish I had the entitlement. I could have started earlier, but I didn't. But now that I did, I'm just going to continue.
Well, maybe you needed the experience of learning what it's like to, take up space and really own it. And now you got more of the experience of what it's like to feel the entitlement. Maybe you didn't start it, but you feel it, and it helps you learn how to move forward with it in the future. Even if it didn't originally come from entitlement, it can help build the sense of it.
Exactly. I mean, this is something that I think about a lot these days, the artistic entitlement, and we are very creative people, and we just have to believe our creativity and kind of like keep going and do things, create things. People out there doing content, they are not necessarily creative, but I mean, we literally learn how to be creative, and I have multiple degrees on it. So, I mean, and this should encourage all others too, because don't not do anything with your education. And music is a very creative and analytic education. So I don't know, do things with it. And doing things with it in 2020 kind of suggests you to do things in social media right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, do things.
Well, sometimes it's good to do things and see what happens.
Exactly. I just do things. I mean, unfortunately, I wasn't artistically entitled enough to start this thing by my own. But why not just do things? I mean, it's like what I did in high school. I didn't have a teacher for at least half a year, up to 1.5 years, depending on if you. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a teacher for one half semester, like one semester. And I just started composing then. Just keep producing.
I think that that's very good advice.
Yeah.
What is next on the horizon for you? What projects are coming up for you? Where can we see more of you in the future?
My God, 2019 was crazy. So many things happened. I would never guess. Uh, and they all happened when I was not expecting. Just like I didn't really expect any of those things. And then the music directorship, the second music directorship, and then my second assistantship, the Mexico debut, Smithsonian debut, also premiere, the Forbes 30 under 30 thing. So it was crazy. And 2020, because of 2019, started crazy. It started so crazy. I think I went to Turkey for 1 month, and when I was going to Turkey, let's put it this way, when I was in Turkey, the day one of 30 days, I had I don't know, 6 things planned. I ended up having 25 things in that 30 days. So my family was a little upset with me because I didn't have time at all. So I'm going back now for 10 days. And I have about 6 things planned. But who knows what's going to happen.
Wow.
And yeah, there are for 2021 season. The thing is, it's just there's one thing that I can't tell yet, but if that happens, all my 2021 is gonna change. So I'm just there will be 1 or 2 months that I'm gonna be waiting. And if that happens, oh my God, I have to move again. But it's a good move. It's gonna be great. But if that doesn't happen, it's great too, because I have so many gigs planned out. So it's good.
Well, the best way for anyone listening to keep on top of what you're doing is to follow you on your Instagram, right? Is that your?
Yeah, my Instagram, or I mean, if you want to follow the concerts, yeah, that Instagram or just my website, nisanak.com works. But yeah, Instagram, Twitter. Twitter, I don't really tweet in English, so yeah, Instagram.
I'll put a link to it in the notes.
Thanks.
Well, I can't wait to see more of what's coming up for you. I was checking out your Instagram and you're just on all these talk shows. You're just exploding. And
I know
you're going to be coming
that
to
1
Berlin.
month I was in Turkey. They're all from there.
Wow. Well, I'm waiting for you to come to Berlin soon. I'm waiting to see you at the Berlin Philharmonie.
That would be great. That would be amazing.
I'm sure it's just a matter of time. I'm going to be seeing you there.
Can't wait. It's not super soon, but why not? I'm not going to say no.
Well, thank you so much, Nisan. And my parents were so excited about me interviewing you, so they are going to be the first people to listen to this.
That's great. That's great. I just say hello to your parents. Your dad was a conducting student at New England, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
great. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I want to hear that.
Well, they met in music school, so, without music, there wouldn't be me.
Right. See? That's the beauty. That's the beauty of music schools.
Well, thank you again, Nissan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love talking to you. I could just talk to you all day.
I want to talk to you all day too, and I wish I could, but I was sick, and I
You
until
are
yesterday,
behind
until
on
this
stuff.
morning actually, this morning
Oh,
until 6 p.m. this morning, I did not leave the bed.
oh my God. Well, I can't wait to see more of you and what's coming up for you. You're so talented and so charismatic and
Thank
intelligent
you.
and funny and beautiful. It's been like just an honor to meet you.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I'm a big fan of yours, so I can't wait to see what the future holds for you, Nissan.
Thank
Thanks for
you
your
so
time.
much. Thank you very much, Caitlin. Nice to meet you again.
Okay, nice to meet you. Okay,
Bye.
bye.